It's that time of year. Look at him. He's bouncing around the room. He's celebrating. He's been putting the work in. He's in the lab. It's Steve Smith Sr., and it's the off season. What does the off season mean? The off season means we're getting into these wide receivers in the 2025 NFL draft class. We're going to be breaking them all down. Individual profiles for each one of these guys. You've seen them before. You've been clamoring for them. I've seen the comments, Steve. It's been, when are you guys going to drop the draft class? When are you going to evaluate this guy? When are you going to... It is coming. It is happening. And I'm just going to say this about my co-host. Steve has hit on these in the past. You have said some of these under the radar guys, and they have flashed early already in their NFL careers.
I love Cooper Kupp. I know you got Corey Davis. I got Cooper Kupp as number one. There's no route he can't run.
Brian Thomas, this kid can play. And when you look at his film and you see what he's able to do, smooth route runner. I love Jalen Coker. He's not going to beat you with speed. He's going to beat you with technique.
Keep your eye out over the next several weeks. We still have time till the draft to pump out all of these different evaluations that we have for guys. All right, so what we're going to be working off of is kind of our consensus big board top 10, Steve. It's going to be something that our producer, John, he went all over the internet, put it all together. This is what we're going to work off of. We're going to have, Steve, your top 10. We're going to evaluate further than this top 10 throughout the next several weeks. But, Steve, I want to start with this group as a whole.
Well, first of all, top 10 does not mean that you will be drafted in the first round. Let's get that out of the way. This top 10 list does not mean all of these guys will be first day guys. Let me tell you, in this top 10 list, there's some day 2 and day 3 guys.
Really?
Because it's a strong tight end class. It's a strong defensive class. It also has some tackles and guards. You got some teams who need other things, and playmakers outside the numbers are not exactly what they need. They still have 4th and 5th round undrafted guys that they received last year that they're giving opportunities to.
Oh, that's a good point.
Let's just go ahead and put up the board of who we got. So, James, you read them off on who we got, and then maybe I can tweak a little bit and tell you, hey, this guy may be moving up, and this guy may be moving down on the board.
Number 1 on this consensus big board, T-Mac. He's the big-bodied receiver out of Arizona, Steve. He is number 1 on almost every board. Is that your number 1 right now on the Smitty big board? T-Mac, is he at 6'4", 219 pounds, your number 1 wide receiver?
He is my number 1 wide receiver on the board.
Okay, well,
I don't necessarily believe that he will be the number 1 wide receiver taken if some teams move around. If someone moves up and tries to get a quarterback, or someone moves up to try to get a tight end, I can see Matthew Golden kind of moving up as the number 1 guy. From Texas, I can see him moving up. T-Mac becomes the number 2 wide receiver. He will be drafted number 1. But depending on who moves up and who doesn't, he can fall. It will just be because of the team who wasn't expecting to get their guy, got their quarterback, and boom, it just, the domino effect.
One question I have with him is, obviously the contested catches are something that he's known for. Obviously, we talked about the size at 6'4", almost 220. How do you, when you're looking at film, try to evaluate the contested catches versus collegiate talent versus those will translate to winning contested catches versus NFL talent? How do you go about that when you're breaking this down, Steve? Because I just wanted to point that out because that is a big part of his game.
That's the only thing a part of his game.
Okay.
Last year when I was watching Jacob Cowing for Arizona, I watched Jacob Cowing and I didn't see T-Mac. I didn't see his presence like I'm seeing it this year. There were times he lacks the focus to be that impact player if he's not the focal point of the offense. So for me, just watching him, good player, not a great player.
Okay.
A lot of room for improvement. I don't think he ran fast. I heard at the combine that he was even thinking, allegedly, thinking about not doing anything. And the reason why is because for him to do something, that he would fall. I don't think he's gonna test well. I don't think he's gonna test out of the waters. I don't think he's gonna run dynamic routes. Now, none of these players are finished products. None of us are finished products until they lay us in the dirt. However, this is an evaluation game, though.
Right now.
And the T-Mac evaluation for me, my humble opinion, is, yeah, he's a number one ranked wide receiver, but he's not the number one wide receiver. I think he leaves a lot of plays on the field.
Okay.
I don't think he has the ability to dominate like his size is. I think he's a jump ball guy, but I don't see his route tree being very elaborate.
I keep hearing when I ask around in this preliminary process, everybody keeps saying Drake London. I don't see that type of player, but I understand the comp. Number 2 guy on the consensus big board is Luther Burden out of Missouri. Is that number 2 on Steve's board?
Well, I got T-Mac moving down to number 2.
Oh.
And so that's Luther moving to number 4 behind Egbuka.
Okay, so who's 1 right now? You got Matthew Golden up there?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about him. Matthew Golden, out of Texas. I know a lot of people that I've talked to early kind of like his demeanor a lot. That's a big box that they
love
like.
his demeanor. A lot of people talk about his demeanor. Yeah.
Like his temperament on the field, that type of thing. What's the reason he's up there?
Well, first of all, he can roll. You know, he's not as fast as he predicted, but he can roll. The system that he's in, when you look at Stark's offense for the Texans, they always have certain guys that do certain things. He runs it like the league. So you got a speed guy, with routes, you got the big body guy who's gonna go in there and do the dirty work. Matthew Golden is the guy who is the speed guy, but has a lot of good routes. I think he's a little bit better route runner than Isaiah Bond, who also can run. He can roll too.
Let's remember, I just want to throw that Matthew Golden, sub 4.3 at the combine.
Yes.
4.29. Go ahead.
So when you look at comparing the two, Matthew Golden and A.D. Mitchell, a lot of people had A.D. Mitchell moving up. Then he got to the combine and you saw he lacked the ability to run decent routes on a consistent basis. And what did he do? He failed. Matthew Golden, I believe, will run better routes, which means his stock will continue to rise, while T-Mac's stock will lower because he won't be able to run a lot of those routes. And I put T-Mac kind of in that Troy Franklin category where you see speed, you love the physical presence, but when you watch him, doesn't have the foot speed that you would like, doesn't get in and out of breaks as fluently and fast as you would like, and doesn't catch the ball with his hands in traffic when it's outside of a jump ball and he's bodying up a defender. And that's the difference with separating these guys, that these guys are being separated on what teams need and what they already have, right? When you look at why A.D. Mitchell was drafted by the Colts, is because they have a T-Mac, which is who?
Michael Pittman?
Michael Pittman Jr., right. Their shifty guy is Alex Pierce, who's an intermediate, but their speed guy is A.D. Mitchell. And then they under the radar, 0 to 9 yards, is Josh Downs, right? So they got all 4 levels covered. Now, obviously, they just need a quarterback.
Well, it's Daniel Jones right now.
And so that's how much, why these guys are moving down and up, and it's based off what they're going to do at their pro day. They've either slipped or moved up a little bit by the interviews and by what they did at the combine. And now the final part will be, how do they work out at their pro day? And that's going to be a telling thing.
Yeah, and you're right. With A.D. Mitchell and what happened to him post-combine, a lot of people I've talked to said that almost the inverse thing happened with Matthew Golden. It was like, let me put the tape back on here, because I saw some things at the combine I really liked. And that's usually what happens, right, Steve? That's why we go through this process. There's certain things that popped when I talked to people around the league about Matthew Golden going, I better go back and watch more of this because I like blank and blank. And so I want, and so there were some things, and I did write this down in my notes, where like, there is an exact quote of, there is a realistic possibility he jumps T-Mac and he's the first receiver off the board. So you're not alone, Steve.
Right. So, but here's why though. Here's why these two guys move up and down. So you got Matthew Golden 1, T-Mac 2, Egbuka 3, Luther Burden 4.
Is that your big 4, by the way?
Yes, sir. That's my big 4. You got those 2 outside guys, T-Mac and Golden, and then bang, Egbuka and Burton are slots. Those are the guys who are going to play in the slots. So that's what you have. You got outside and slots. Now, Egbuka can play anywhere. It depends on, is he looked at by a team as a slot guy or an outside guy? Talking to some people around the league, talking to some folks at Ohio State, they regard he lacks the speed. However, his IQ makes him such a creative player and a high-level player that you want him in your huddle, right? So a guy like Egbuka
that can move you up a little bit in some.
That can move you up depending on who needs a slot receiver. But because he lacks that top end speed, that elite speed, they're gonna put him in the inside because he becomes a mismatch for anybody in the slot because of his ability to manipulate the secondary, to manipulate the smaller body, lesser talented nickel corner. So that's why I have him. So 1, Golden, 2, T-Mac, 3, Bouquet, and 4, Burton from Missouri. And those top 4 guys, so you're talking about 2 outside guys, followed by 2 slot guys.
Okay, let me ask you about Emeka Egbuka real quick because obviously I'm a Buckeye and I love watching Ohio State and I see all of these games. When you're evaluating these guys and he is at Ohio State for an eternity, we know the number of receivers that have gone through that program, right, and the way they've been drafted. And then Jeremiah Smith comes in and blows the doors off of college football as a true freshman, and Mbuka's comfortable being a 2 when he sees Jeremiah Smith come in. Is that valuable, Steve? Is it fine evaluating him going, well, guess what? Like, we've talked about receiver duos. I'm cool taking this guy high, even if we have a 1, because I love the combination of the 2 and what he does for our offense. Is there value in taking a guy that you're going to play as a 2 that high in the first round? When I say that high, I mean in the first round, and you're comfortable with him being the 2.
You want me to read you what one of my sources said about him?
This episode of 89 is brought to you by Row. Listen up, people. It's spring, right? Everything is in bloom. So let's talk a little birds and bees, because everybody's a little frisky in the spring. And Row Sparks, well, they have you covered. If you're looking for a little boost, a little more fun for you and your partner, well, Row has it taken care of. Now, I'm no doctor, but you put it under your tongue, it dissolves, it lasts for up to 36 hours, so you can go back to back to back to back if you'd like. Now, Row connects you with a medical provider 100% online, so there's no awkward face-to-face interaction. And, you know, if you're approved, shipped directly to your door. So if prescribed, new sexual health patients will get $15 off Sparks on a reoccurring plan. So connect with a provider at row.co/89 to find out if a prescription for Row Sparks is for you. Be ready to play with Row Sparks.
You want me to read you what one of my sources said about him?
No, I don't. Let's move on. No, yeah, I do. Go ahead.
Oh, man. Oh. We don't win a national championship without him. He had a great year and didn't complain, just wanted to win.
Value. That's valuable.
That's a guy you want. And he's a game changer. So he's a game changer, he's selfless, and he's valuable. Man,
yep.
That's what one source told me.
That's big.
Huge.
All right, so then the 4th guy on your list is Luther Burden out of Missouri. I've talked to people, Steve, this could be a 2nd-round pick. Am I accurate on that? That has been...
With Burton?
Yeah.
Nah, I think because he's a slot, because he's fast, we turn him on the film, they did a great job of forcing the football to him. And I say force because I believe that Theo was kind of alienated out of the offense at times. He was not given the same equal opportunities of the routes, right? In the offense, a slot receiver and an outside receiver generally run different types of routes.
Yep.
But then you also see a guy that may be on the outside that gets an opportunity. Theo never got really an opportunity to run in the inside as much because Luther was just such a dynamic player and he was really good. He can get out, he can run. He was more of screens, intermediate, up the middle of the field, mismatch, outrun the linebackers. Theo was really a crosser, deep threat. Not really given the same equal opportunity as Luther. So that's where I think some teams who are looking for a slot, but also looking for a contributor early we'll use him in the first round, because if you wait till the second round, that's the type of thing where some teams will start talking to other teams soon as the first round over, and when the second round starts the next day, they're gonna be moving up to get a kid like that. So I would imagine he's probably gonna go where someone's gonna move up and get rid of their second to move up in the first to solidify getting their guy that they want.
Okay, I like that, because I think we're getting into this group, and I can't wait to say this sentence that was given to me by a national scout. There's a couple of guys I like at the top, and then we have a, quote, chunky middle, whatever that means, Steve, right? I was like, I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
That's a bad body, right? Is that a dad bod?
I don't think he's talking about the physical build of these guys and they're like Chunk from Goonies. He's talking about there's a bulk of receivers that are kind of in this group, like you said, where I think you mentioned after Luther Burden, there could be a variety of guys going off the board. Like there's this heavy group after those top four that could be taken. So where do you go at 5 on the Steve Smith Smitty big board?
For me, man, I'm going to move up Jalen Royals from Utah State. And I'm a Utah guy.
I was about to say, this is a bias situation. Okay, got it. Go ahead.
You know, I do not like showing love to the Utah State and
not
BYU.
being a Utah guy.
But, man, when I turn on the film and watch this kid, he can really run some routes. Now, some folks going to get mad at me, but he has some bad quarterback play. Googling, moogling. I don't think his wide receivers coach is very good either because of some of the things that they were teaching him how to do. They was giving him some bad habits. But I like this kid. Big, stout kid, attacks the DB. I love his routes. He'll catch the ball in traffic. He had to because his quarterback was hanging him out to dry constantly. But he runs a really good, smooth route running. And just his technique and some of the things he was taught, I just disagree with him on the things that he was taught. And so I think he's going to be a dynamic football player. So he is my number 5.
Number 5. Okay, quick note on Jalen Royals before we move on. When you're watching film and you're seeing quarterback play at that level, oftentimes good quarterback play can get a receiver drafted higher. I'm curious if bad quarterback play can get you drafted higher, because it shows you watching,
it doesn't.
Wow, look what he had to work with.
No, what it does is it makes, depending on the scout, it makes the scout turn the film off.
Yeah.
But it also makes as well that they have you do some extra things at your pro day, because they can't depend on the quarterback throwing the ball. They have to just see if he has the footwork.
Okay, so it's a harder evaluation with bad quarterback.
Oh, it's a more difficult evaluation.
Okay,
yes, sir.
Dig it. Okay,
yeah. It can work against you as well.
Got it. Yeah, I figured the natural case was it could work against you. I was curious if there's any part of it that you look at and go,
well, it also depends on too
look at the body control on some of these balls.
What you don't want to do is go to the combine. They ask you about your quarterback. You got bad quarterback play, and you do what he's done to you is you hang him out dry. Oh, he was trash. You don't want to say that. You just, I like to use the word unique. Yeah, our offense was challenging.
All right, challenging. All right. On the consensus board, at number 5,
Elic Ayomanor. Good player. Really good player.
Canadian.
So he puts petrol in his car. Okay.
Hey, I'm just throwing it out there.
He's a big body guy. He lacks a little bit of speed, but he's a little bit a step below McMillan, right? He's a guy that he's impressive. He can catch some passes. He's an intermediate route runner, but I just don't see right now, not that it can't happen, but I don't see right now him having a dynamic rookie season. I think it'll take some time for him to really kind of get the swing of things. He kind of reminds me of a Miles Boykin. Remember when Miles was from the Ravens drafted him? He was out of Notre Dame, big guy, but just couldn't sink his hips. It didn't translate, and he just sometimes he got pressed up way too much. Couldn't create clean releases. So that's what he kind of reminds me of. That I'm not really sure how well he would do into the league when these guys quick jam him and him being able to get off, create free access as much as they don't do in college. Because a few times in college, he got pressed up a little bit, and it took him a little bit to pull that Cadillac out the parking lot. So Elic Ayomanor, he's dropping down to 10.
He'll be dropping, okay. Number 6 was Tre Harris from Ole Miss.
I think he stays. Tre Harris stays right there. He does some things outstanding on the football field. You see him, but you just kind of go, is this an Ole Miss guy, right?
Yep, okay.
Ole Miss, they're starting to create a little bit of a bias, just like LSU is creating a bias of dynamic wide receivers, right? So.
Are we missing one?
Huh?
Are we missing an organization that is?
Ohio State as well.
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
I'm sorry. With Harris, where does he go and what is he seen with? You look at Ole Miss, outside of DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown, there has been some other players that were drafted and highly touted, but for whatever reason, what they did in college did not translate to a productive and successful pro career. So he falls in that eye rolling. Is he the typical Ole Miss wide receiver who is coached well, system is done great, but you get him out of that system, he may struggle. So, some of that can happen. Yeah, so I could go with Jack Beach from TCU. Man, that kid can play. Put him at number 7. This is a guy that I would possibly move to tight end, not necessarily keep him at wide receiver, but that's just my opinion. I think he creates more of a mismatch as a tight end rather than as a wide receiver. I think he's not as fast as you would want him to be, but he becomes a pass catcher and a nightmare for a linebacker to cover. I would love to see this type of player when he gets up there in his 3rd or 4th year. That's the type of player that he would probably go against Fred Warner, and it'll be like Clash of the Titans, where those guys would be battling it out in the pass game, not the run game, because he's going to lose. But in the pass game,
I was about to say.
In the pass game, I think.
That's intriguing. At 6'1", Steve, he still can do the tight end situation? Fine.
I watched his film, bro. He's not a wide receiver.
Okay, I just asked.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes, they say there's not a dumb question.
Yeah.
That was a dumb question.
Okay. John cut that out.
No, keep that in there.
So if we go down the board, then number 9, Jayden Higgens, Iowa State.
Ooh, like this kid.
This episode of 89 is brought to you by BetterHelp. In football, you have a support system, right? Whether it's your coaches, your trainers, or your teammates to help you kind of succeed. But what about you? What about off the field and making yourself the best version of yourself? Well, BetterHelp can help you do that. I know oftentimes we're playing hero ball, right? We're going at it all by ourselves. We got to do it alone. But when you talk to a therapist, you have an opportunity to alleviate that. And we're not just talking about major trauma. We're talking about coping with a variety of things, whether it's relationship issues, just overall stress, just creating the best environment for you to be the best version of yourself. And BetterHelp can help you do that. Now, the best thing about it is BetterHelp is 100% online, so it is both affordable and convenient. With over 5 million people participating worldwide, well, you're in good hands. So, build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/89 and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/89. Number 9, Jayden Higgens, Iowa State.
Ooh, like this kid.
Really? Okay. Let's see.
Yes, I like him. Like what? I like just watching his film. Moves all over the field. Explosive, despite his estimated 4.5. This was prior to the combine. Not sure what he ran.
4.47 he ran at the combine. People were happy with how he ran at the combine at his size.
Yes, I did not know his 40 time. I did not completely watch the combine because guess what? I don't need to because I did so much research ahead of time.
Well, it is kind of true because you did say he'd run better than the 4.5 and he moves really, really well. So there you go.
Yes. You know who he reminds me of?
Oh, hit me.
Right there, I hit you. Mike Evans.
Oh, okay.
When I was watching this film, I was like, dang, that Mike Evans right there.
Wow, that's high praise
there.
But what about Mike's game? Is it the smoothness? Is it the smoothness at the size?
Just like Mike Evans, he knows exactly what he lacks in his clock time. He understands that he's not going to be 4.3. But when Mike gets into his route and he's able to maneuver himself, he finds himself stacking you and putting you out of position with leverage, savviness, and his size. That's what reminded me of Mike Evans.
Oh, I like that. I like that. How do you look at a player like this? And again, we will have in-depth profiles of all of these guys. When he gets into football late, Steve, like that's a thing that I've like just asking around.
Well, I think it's good because now a lot of these teams, colleges, have this artificial turf. So he doesn't have as much wear on the tires. And you don't have to concern yourself with how many reps he's going. These teams, they look at workload. They look at wear and tear. And so this is a guy where he's still learning, which means he has such a bigger shoes to fill and still learning the game.
Yeah.
That he hasn't peaked. You know, some of these guys you go say, hey, this is the best you're going to get out of them, or you can squeeze a little bit more juice out of this lemon. Man, this guy isn't even ripe yet. He's just getting there. He's just starting to sprout a flower right there on that fruit tree.
I dig it. I dig it. And number 10 on the consensus big board that we have here, Steve, Isaiah Bond from Texas. You mentioned him earlier. You have him higher, I believe.
Yeah, I'm at 10. I got him moving up. I think he can roll. He's a good player. You saw international championship games in the conference play, in the playoffs. He was dynamic. He can roll. Outstanding player. Again, another guy from Texas that has the ability to benefit from that system. But even in benefiting from that system, those guys know how to play football. Mm-hmm. And when you know how to play football, you come in a little bit more ready than some of the other guys. And so that gives you an advantage because the coach knows exactly what they need to work on and what they don't need to work on. So for me, that's why he moves up. So I have, as we recap, number 1, Golden, McMillan, Egbuka, Burton, Royals at number 5, mm-hmm. Harris at number 6,
okay.
Bech at 7, Higgens at 8, Isaiah Bond at 9, and Elic Ayomanor at number 10.
I love it. That's the Smitty big board. That's the top 10. We will, again, I've said this over and over again, but I know you guys love them, so we're going to make sure we tell you. We are going to be doing full breakdowns of each and every one of these wide receivers and more, right, Steve? We're going to do more than these top 10.
Yes, we're going to do more than this because we're going to have some guys that are some under-the-radar guys. Some guys that I've been watching that I'm like, ooh, you know, hey, who knows? Go ahead and leave your comments down at the bottom. Tell us what is your top 10 out of this mix. Now, understand when we are asking you to name your top 10, don't come at us like it's Mel Kiper and then you. Like we just ask it. We just want to know what your top 10 is. We don't need you to do a thesis on what your top 10 is and why I'm completely wrong. Because if we wanted to know, we would have you on 89, but we're just allowing you to comment. Don't make us turn off the comments. Y'all know we done did it before.
Well, they're still on right now. Tell you that.